The news story the day after the Iowa election, the number one news story was that Barack Obama won the Iowa caucus. The number two news story was that the youth vote was critical in making that happen. I think the cynicism that we kind of grew up with, every time you would turn on the TV and folks would talk about voting, it seemed like CNN was always running a story about how if you were between the ages of 18 and 35, you would never vote. And there was never anything any of us could do about that. And how older folks in our parents' generation would always vote, but we were kind of on the opposite side of that. So thankfully, there were also contradictory stories being run that sort of had to do with the writer's strike, and they talked about new media, MySpace, Facebook, and YouTube. How many of you have seen one video on YouTube in the last 3 days? Okay. So YouTube's a free service to use, and they make $7.5 million a month in advertising revenue because of how many of us collectively go on there. Another statistic we saw in this same article was that MySpace was recently sold for just under $600 million to a company called News Corp, one of the world's largest media conglomerates. Certainly no small feat for the folks that started MySpace. Facebook was the most clear example and the clear contradiction of what we saw. Facebook was started by 3 college guys in their 20s over in Boston just a few years ago. These 3 guys are still in their 20s, and Facebook was recently valued at $1.6 billion. So we sat there and we said, wait a second, you're telling us on the one hand that we're not gonna go vote and that our power doesn't mean anything. We actually have no power. At the same time, you're telling us that we made billions of dollars in wealth for these companies just by sitting in front of our computers and tagging photos and messaging your friends and then waking up the next morning and untagging the photos you tagged the night before. And that made billions of dollars in wealth. So if we can make billions of dollars in wealth for our peers' companies just by sitting in front of our computers, think about the power that we have to change the face of a presidential election. And not just one presidential election, but really the way in which politics operate in this country to begin with.